Good morning, everyone. My name is Waylon Lewis. I wanted to talk about empathy today. Empathy is one of the most important subjects in the world in any context, in any time, in any situation, because it applies to all times and all contexts and all situations. Empathy has been called the most powerful human or the most powerfully transformative human emotion there is because it takes suffering, it takes confusion, it takes anger and hatred, it takes prejudice, it takes everything kind of negative and gnarly, and it processes it through our human uh, experience into caring, into compassion, into bravery. So I wanted to talk about the two stages of empathy. And this isn't some cute little Facebook title I made up. This is um, both according to the definition and our basic understanding of empathy, and also to the Buddhist notion of empathy or compassion. So the first stage, of course, is that we are confronted with a world. I'll just read a Buddhist quote here. It says, "By the dance of the setting sun is often used to connote, to refer to the suffering of human beings, the cruelty, the um, the sadness, the depression, the anger, the warfare. By the dance of the setting sun, the entire world becomes cowardly." So, this is something that's been going on in my life more and more as I get older. Is friends and businesses and people who weren't friends, but I feel like sometimes lately I'm surrounded by cowardly, cynical, mean people. I just reported on the news of one of my favorite secondhand stores, probably my favorite, and it's been a community for me for many years. I haven't been friends with everyone, but I've been friendly. It's a place you walk in, you try stuff on, and one of my best friends was a manager there. And anyway, she quit years ago, but now it's coming out all these accusations of sexual abuse and rampant drug use and maybe underage drug use and sexual abuse, and it's just awful and depressing. It makes you feel like kind of makes you feel like throwing up when you read about it. So anyway, this is where empathy is so powerful. It can take that kind of suffering, that sadness, that cynicism, that cruelty, and it can process that. So instead of being just wanting to close down, or just instead of getting stuck in that or depressed, we re-engage. And how do we re-engage, and why do we re-engage? It's not a deliberate thing. That's sort of the magic here. It's really just through compassion. It's actually a natural process. It's not something conscious or deliberate. When we're confronted with suffering, there's two ways we can go. One, we can try to wall it off. We can build the sort of gated community spirituality, which sometimes people call being an empath. Being an empath is beautiful. If you're empathetic, that is beautiful. But if we're confronted with hate or cynicism, we can also feel that. We can be brave enough to be vulnerable. People have heard that before, but it's a real thing. We can remain open. And that does take breathing, that does take meditation, that does take bravery. And then we can kind of just sit there, like one of my editors said, sit in the yuck. She was writing specifically about anti-racism. So instead of running, or instead of saying, no, immigrants are bad, or, black people are this, or women are that, or, indigenous people are this or that, we can remain open with our own feelings of discomfort. And that can be heartbreaking. I went through that with my conversation with Jane Elliott, an anti-racism educator. Just sitting in that yuck is heartbreaking. And heartbreaking can be good. It's sort of heart melting. It's not just heartbreaking, it's heart melting. What naturally happens is empathy. So the commentary on that Buddhist quote is, the warrior, the brave, vulnerable one, is their vision is how to lead a sane and dignified life, which we call the vision of the great eastern sun, the morning sun, the rising sun, is based on celebrating life. And that was so helpful for me to hear with those accusations around this Buffalo Exchange place. It is contrasted to the setting sun. the sun that is going down and dissolving into darkness. Setting sun vision is based on trying to ward off death. It is based on fear. The world of the setting sun, we are constant in the world of the setting sun. We are constantly afraid of ourselves, ashamed of who and what we are. So if we're brave, we can actually, like, I love that a lot of the anti-maskers are saying, you guys are just buying into fear. It's actually the opposite. The anti-maskers are generally afraid of fear. It's okay to be afraid and react. It's why we have fear of heights. You don't want to fall off a cliff. So we look at the fear. There may be actually intelligence or common sense in the fear. We look at it. We don't run away from it and pretend we're not afraid. We look at it, and then we engage in caring for others. And that's exactly what wearing a mask is saying. And it's okay to talk about political things because, at least in this case, it's not political. We can be Republican, we can be Democrat, and we can care about others. We can just reduce those aerosols, you know? So I don't want to get caught up in the mask stuff, but we have 150,000 people have died, you know? If not more, if you look at average death rates. So engaging in caring is a political act. It is an anti-racist act. It is an act of education and of love. And love is fundamentally, hopefully, what we're all about. So the first stage of empathy is feeling that suffering, looking at it, sitting with it. The second stage is allowing it to melt you, allowing it to break you, and allowing that, when it breaks it, it's like breaking a jar of honey, and allowing that love to just flow out to the whole world. So instead of retreating behind our gated communities, behind our walls, we engage in caring actively for others. So empathy is not complete just with that first stage. Empathy is not complete just with that first stage. Empathy is a two-stage process, and it has to end in compassion to be empathy. It can't be empathy if we feel the suffering, the sadness, and we just try to protect ourselves. That's stage one. That's fine. That's beautiful. But we then have to engage in bravery, in that vulnerability, and engage in caring for others. Thank you so much.